Hi, it's Eleanor, and welcome to Power Presence Position episode number 455. In today's episode, we are exploring disqualify selling. So disqualification is all about drawing clear boundaries around who your brand, company, and offerings are not for. When you do it right, you can catapult your brand to cult status, grow your revenues to heights you've never seen, and make the process of closing sales much more elegant and refined. That's the power of disqualification. It's the energy of saying no, and we're talking about it in this episode. Don't go anywhere. This is going to be good.
So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go.
I am what is known as a curly girl. I have super curly hair. Under ideal circumstances, my hair is basically a mane of gleaming corkscrews. Just ask me. But under unfavorable circumstances, it devolves to half frizz, half Medusa. My hair is so curly that if you were to pull one of those corkscrew curls straight, it will bounce back to its regular curly position in under a second. As anyone with hair like mine will attest, curls are deeply misunderstood and somewhat underappreciated by the mainstream. So most of us who have curly hair have struggled mightily against our natural hairstyle and tendencies. Several years ago, a stylist told me to look up a woman named Lorraine Massey. You see, Massey, who was a stylist and herself a curly girl, had invented something called the curly girl method. It's a methodology Massey developed to properly care for and style curly hair. I did my research. I fully adopted Massey's approach in 2020 to extraordinary effect, I must say. My curls have never looked better, and I use her methodology religiously. And so for those of you who are interested in the curly girl method, basically I never use shampoo that suds. I threw away all my hair oils and styling creams in favor of gel and only gel. So basically I get out of the shower with my sopping wet, heavily conditioned hair. I put large amounts of gel on that sopping wet hair, let the hair air dry so that I basically have legit jerry curls. And then I scrunch up my curls to break the gel cast. Voila, gorgeous curls. From that point, I basically sleep with silk pillows that are much easier. I only use microfiber hair towels. I only wash my hair once, maybe twice a week. That's kind of the heart of the curly girl method. And it's a lifesaver for women like me who have grown up with curly hair, but not often been educated on how to treat that curly hair. Anyway, back to Lorraine Massey. She not only invented the curly girl method, but she started curly girl salons where they only cut curly hair. She started her own brand of beauty products for quote unquote curly girls. P.S. I'll be telling you a little bit more about those beauty products in a second. But back to Lorraine, she even published a book on the curly girl method, which naturally I own. The idea is that curly hair is totally different from straight hair. So Massey excluded or disqualified straight-haired women from her entire business ecosystem and focused exclusively on her curly girls. She disqualified, and this act of disqualification accomplished a couple of key things for Massey and her brand. So first, it established Massey as a cult hero among women who have curly hair. I mean, we call ourselves curly girls, which is a little embarrassing, but also a testament to the power of disqualification and the sense of that feeling that you belong somewhere. The second is that in saying no to straight hair, in focusing exclusively all her enormous talents only on those of us who have curly hair, it made us feel like finally we had a brand who understood us. Finally, there's a place where we belong. Finally, there's a brand that appreciates us and our hair in all its unruliness. It's really powerful. This approach helped her salons and products become massively successful, and that in turn made Massey a very rich woman. She sold the company for an undisclosed amount in 2013, safe to say for millions. Now, here's the twist. In the years after Massey left the company she sold went on to face some fairly high-profile lawsuits that their products were alleged to have led to hair loss and scalp conditions. Now, I haven't experienced that, but you can read all about the lawsuits, and of course, it's really unfortunate. But I'm hoping you can see the larger point of this story. Even in the midst of this level of controversy, curly-haired women like me are still talking about her. And I think this goes to show that when an entrepreneur has the ovaries to own who she is truly here to serve, and combined with the guts to exclude and disqualify those who she isn't here to serve, well, that's a seven-figure decision that can make her beloved, iconic, and rich. The curly girl method is a great example of the power of disqualification. But before we proceed much further, I want to take some time to clearly define what disqualification actually is. Disqualification is a marketing tactic and a business mindset. When you embrace the power of disqualification, you're doing two things. First, you're acknowledging that you aren't for everyone. And as an entrepreneur and marketer, this is just massively freeing. Now, lots of people pay lip service to the fact that they're not for everyone, but few people actually back that belief up with clear action. So the second part of disqualification is all about clearly stating to the marketplace not only who you are for, but also who you are not for. When it comes to clearly stating who you are not for, i.e. actively disqualifying, you can do that implicitly or explicitly. Lorraine Massey of the Curly Girl Method was able to disqualify implicitly in that she didn't say no straight hair allowed. Rather, she called her technique the Curly Girl Method and only ever used images of curly hair. So she was implicitly stating that herself, her methodology, her products, her salons were exclusively for women with curly hair. Therefore, this implicitly disqualified women with straight hair. There's another way that you can disqualify, though, and that's explicit disqualification. And one of my favorite examples of explicit disqualification comes from what is probably the very best song of all time. And of course, it's the 1987 song Push It by Salt and Peppa. If you haven't heard this song, number one, where have you been? Number two, what's wrong with you? And number three, you are seriously missing out. So go listen to it, bust a move, get on down, but I want you to pay careful attention to the part where Herbie Lovebug Azer, i.e. their keyboard player, says this. Now wait a minute, y'all. This dance ain't for everybody. It's only for the sexy people. And that, my friends, is explicit disqualification, only for the sexy people. Side note, what I love about the explicit disqualification in Push It is that we get to decide if we're sexy people or not. And judging by how packed every dance floor I have ever been on always is every time Pusha comes on, we are all sexy people when that song comes on. Ironically, even though disqualification is about saying no, it's actually anchored in a pervading belief of more than enough, of abundance. In other words, in order to disqualify, you need to bring yourself around to the belief that there are more than enough clients out there. And when you exist in that belief, when you're anchored in that belief, it allows you to be specific about who you will work with and who you will not work with. And this is why disqualification is actually an advanced strategy, not because it's hard to do. I'm in fact going to give you some really simple tips on how to weave disqualify selling into your overall process in a moment. But it's an advanced strategy because disqualification requires guts and maturity to pull off. In order to actively discourage the wrong people from buying your offers, you need to get yourself mentally to a place where you believe in abundance and where you believe that being focused and saying no is healthy, productive, and safe. You might tell yourself, okay, Eleanor, that's fine. I'm going to believe I have more than enough when I hit a certain revenue milestone. I believe I'm going to be at a certain revenue milestone in order to start disqualifying. But honestly, I think the act of disqualifying, the very act of declaring, this is who I'm for, this is who I am not for, that act is what produces the abundance mindset. So the act of disqualification actually produces the energy of clarity, autonomy, and independence. And that in turn supports an abundance mindset where you know there is always more than enough. Now, I know I'm getting a little woo-woo here, and I promise that I'm going to offer you some very tactical disqualification steps, but I want to focus on the mindset of disqualification a little longer. Not your mindset, though, your prospect's mindset. Most days after school and before supper, our family does a little routine called study hall.
Here's my mom not understanding how much study hall sucks.
That's my son, Tobias. What he thinks about study hall in this instance is irrelevant. Study hall is non-negotiable, everybody. Anyway, the boys sit down, they do their homework, and after, I'll usually go through it and mark it. And as I buzz through their work, what I've noticed is that my brain is normally scanning for any mistakes. Yes, I'm marking what they did well. Yes, I'm acknowledging the progress that they're making, but my brain is totally looking for mistakes and errors. I find them, I point them out, I help them work through those mistakes, and then we're done study hall for the day. You know that part about my brain looking for mistakes in homework? Well, as it turns out, that's what your prospects are doing when you market and sell to them. Their brains are hardwired to look for risks, problems, and red flags. That's what our brains are trained to do. So yes, people love to buy. Yes, they may well be intrigued with your marketing, but entrepreneurs like us can never forget that the human brain is wired to root out and expose risks and red flags. Our brains are constantly scanning for risks and threats. So imagine you saying to a prospect, I have the perfect solution and it works for everybody. When you do that, number one, you are selling them something that feels unbelievable. And number two, you are actively trying to override your prospect's brain. They know it's not a perfect solution and they know it doesn't work for everybody because of years of data and evidence of collecting red flags. So when you don't acknowledge red flags, when you pretend that your offer is perfect for everyone, you become unbelievable and you start to lack credibility. This is where the power of disqualification really comes into play. When you say, I have a solution, it overcomes this problem, it delivers this result, but it's not for everybody. In fact, this is who my solution is for. And importantly, this is who my solution is not for. So what I've just done is model what disqualify selling can look like. This simple act of disqualifying immediately increases your credibility in your prospect's brain. You raise the red flag so they didn't have to. And oddly, by raising a red flag yourself, i.e., here's this great offer, but it is not for people like this, what that does is it actually helps to eliminate red flags in your prospect's mind. You come across as much more trustworthy as you should be because you've done the work of analyzing who you are for and who you are not for. Disqualification is simple, it's elegant, it's an advanced strategy, and it is very effective. So we've established what disqualification is and why it's so powerful. Here are 3 tips to help implement disqualification in your overall business ecosystem. Now, there is a big tip here that I actually won't address directly, and that's, of course, the power of actually knowing who you would disqualify. That's where a strong niche comes in. Taking the time to decide which segment of your market you're going to serve is really important. This podcast episode is all about showing you how to disqualify other people and how to show practical tips on how to do that. But it doesn't actually give you any guideposts or support in choosing who you're for and who you're not for. That's called niching. If you want more information on niching, I suggest you scroll back a few episodes and check out 452 on 7-figure niching secrets. And of course, this is the work that we do inside the Power Presence Position Business Accelerator. Once you know who your niche is, then you're ready to start creating the boundaries that will clearly indicate who you're for and who you're not for. So let's provide you with the tips to help you start setting those boundaries. Here they are. Number 1, clearly state who you're for and not for on your sales pages, web properties, brochures, etc. Number 2, create barriers that allow people to self-deselect. And number 3, galvanize from your ecosystem with high attitude content. Okay, let's dive in. So strategy number 1, or tip number 1 rather, is to clearly state who you are for and not for. You know, one of my company's 3 core values is all in. When someone comes into our business ecosystem, we are all in with them. I think about our clients when I lie in bed. I get ideas for them. I'm just generally obsessed. And to be honest, I'm not the only one. Our other team members are like that as well because they work with a company whose value is all in. So I don't want to invest, and I don't want our team members investing that level of attention and intention in just anyone. We need to take the time to literally list who we are not for and who we are for so that it's really, really clear. Because by the time people come into our ecosystem, we want them to know that they belong here. And the best way to know if you belong is to have the person who kind of owns that ecosystem or who created that ecosystem to say, hey, you're going to do great here if you're like this. You're going to have a harder time here if you're like this. Okay? So you can check out an example of this if you go to powerpresenceposition.com, and you'll see on that page where we talk about the accelerator, I'm clearly showing who we're for and who we're not for. You can do this yourself on sales pages. You can do it in sales emails. Use this tactic of not just knowing in your heart who you're for and not for, but actually saying it out loud. Use this tactic as liberally as you like, and notice how good it feels to lead your company from this place of clarity, intention, and decision. Clearly stating who you are for and who you are not for is like oxygen for the psyche and for your business. So the next tip is to create barriers that allow people to self self-deselect. And one simple way to do this is to implement an application system in your selling. And again, I want to make this really tactical for you so you can see an example of what our application system looks like if you go to coachwitheleanor.com. Now, I'm not showing you these personal examples because I want you to be a mini-me. I want to simply provide you an example that could be instructive or useful. But really, if you go to coachwitheleanor.com and take a look at what I have there, I want you to notice something specific. On the page, I ask if you are willing to invest a certain amount of money in your development in the next 90 days. I'm really specific about how much and what time frame. This is so important. And when I got this, it really transformed a lot in how our company sells. There are entire courses devoted to overcoming pricing objections. If people think you're too much, or they're just not sure if they can afford you, or they don't want to invest that much, all of that. And honestly, maybe if I were a better salesperson or more interested in really overcoming objections, I would have more interest in learning about how to overcome pricing objections. But honestly, I'm going to be real with you. I have zero interest in overcoming pricing objections. This doesn't mean you should have zero interest in overcoming pricing objections. This is just the decision that I have made for our company. We are not going to put a lot of energy there. Our expectation is that we provide really good disqualify marketing, so by the time we're talking to you, we're on the same page with respect to budget. I know a lot of you feel the same way. So that's why I make sure that I disqualify people who would bring me pricing objections before they get a chance. And I do so with that nifty application. But let's take a deeper look at what that simple application question achieves. So basically, it disqualifies people who are still having that internal conversation with themselves. And that internal conversation is my business worth investing in? Now, this is an important question, right? And it's a worthwhile question for every woman entrepreneur to ask herself. But honestly, for our company, we work with serious and committed entrepreneurs who already know their ideas and businesses are worth investing in. So if a woman isn't there yet, then what we are actively trying to do is put out questions that help her deselect, that help her understand, you know what? I'm not here yet. I'm not ready. This isn't for me right now. It's really powerful. Once we implemented this, we had almost no pricing objections ever in our selling process. It's just really elegant. And I feel that it creates this act of disqualification actually lends a huge amount of respect and care in the overall selling process. And that brings us to our final tip. So tip number 3 is to actively galvanize people out of your ecosystem with high attitude content marketing. Basically, what you're looking to do here is in your content marketing, whether it's the emails that you send to your email list, your podcasts, your Facebook Lives, your webinars, things that you do where you are actively connecting with your core audience. It's about finding ways to make sure that embedded into that content, you are actively disqualifying people. Now, I know everyone says they want a big audience, but I honestly think most entrepreneurs are better served by having a core group of people who are genuinely interested in what they have to say. For an entrepreneur, indifference is soul destroying. So don't tolerate indifference. By injecting high attitude content or bold opinions into your marketing content, you can help your audience either A, deepen their relationship with you, or B, opt out, aka disqualify themselves. So let me give you an example. And again, this is another personal example. Humor is really important to me. Like, honestly, if you don't love laughter, if you don't love a little bit of irreverence, if you don't have a really good sense of humor or are open to laughing about things that happen in business, you won't enjoy our programs. They just will not be a fit for you. So I inject a lot of attitude, a lot of humor. I try to push it, not in every single email I do, but in probably 1 in every 3 emails. I'm going to inject some high attitude into my email marketing to disqualify people who aren't a fit. So I'm going to give you an example. Last year, I emailed my list about the dangers of perfectionism and the dangers of placing high expectations on yourself. And the headline was, "Stop masturbating already." Dude, get your head out of the gutter. I didn't say masturbate. I said masturbate, as in stop telling yourself you must do this, you must do that. Stop making all the musts. I wrote a whole email about it. Now, some people unsubscribed because they did not find the word masturbating funny. They found it totally uncouth. Many others wrote back to me in appreciation. My point is, decide what's important to you. Decide how you want to show up in the world. Decide who you are for and not for, and make that a point of disqualification. Why bother investing your marketing energy in people who will not be a fit for you? It serves neither you nor them. So I have friends who want to be much more mainstream in their marketing approach. They would never say, "Stop masturbating already." Me, I do not want to be mainstream in our approach. I want to be really niche. There's a very specific type of woman I know is going to work great in our programs. And so I create high attitude content that is also high value content. And that really galvanizes the right people and speaks to the right people. And it elegantly disqualifies people who are not going to be a fit for us. So there you have it. 3 tips on how to weave disqualify selling into your business ecosystem. You know, earlier in my entrepreneurial career, I was always thinking of ways to quote unquote stand out. And to this day, entrepreneurs ask me all the time about how they can stand out in a saturated market. And that's a useful question, but I think a more powerful question is to ask yourself not how you can stand out, but what you want to stand for. Take the time to get really clear about that, but don't stop there. Once you know what you stand for, own it, state it, enforce it. Use the power of disqualification to bring more order and elegance to your company. And see how having the courage to stand for something not only takes your revenues to new heights, but makes the process so much more enjoyable. Still here? Awesome. That means you have spurned my best efforts to disqualify, which means we are officially friends for life. Now, speaking of friends for life, I want to highlight listener Sarah Friess, who gave us a 5-star review on iTunes. She says, "Amazing. I highly recommend listening to this podcast for some inspiration and to hear valuable tips to help you and your business grow." Thank you so much for that review, Sarah Friess. I so appreciate it. Listen, if you love the show, I'd so appreciate if you would take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review Power Presence Position on iTunes or on your favorite podcast player, and help us get the word out by recommending the show to a woman entrepreneur in your network. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time. If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e. my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, when you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out, because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story.
I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join. And I promise you it will be the highlight of your inbox.